Our next speaker joins us from Woodbine. Steve Koch is the vice president of Thoroughbred Racing up there. And I'll tell you that in our racetrack accreditation experience, there are rare tracks that have publicly stated that their goal is to more than minimally exceed the standards that we've written, and they're striving to be a quote-unquote best practice in every line item of our code of standards. So it's refreshing to work with Steve and Woodbine. Steve's going to discuss Woodbine's approach to managing its operation under the single directive that safety is a primary business concern of that organization. Many of the protocols that Steve will discuss today, we've shared elsewhere, and we look forward to hearing what Steve has to say. Steve?
So good morning, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this very important endeavor, the Welfare and Safety Summit. And it's awfully nice to be back in my hometown. Always glad for a little trip down south. Of course, they did check my passport at the Ohio River. I think let's open with why am I here? I'm here to bring a racetrack operator's perspective to these proceedings. And in that course, let me open my remarks with the role of safety for horses, riders, and the safety for all participants at Woodbine. Safety, integrity, and the pursuit of the very best for horse racing is standard operating procedure at Woodbine. We're very fortunate to have the support of our board, our executives, and it trickles right on down through our, throughout the company and through the ranks and right through our horsemen. There's an actual culture of safety at Woodbine, and this means that our staff always rise to the best interests of the horse, and it means that we have a fantastic relationship with our horsemen in these areas too. What this means to me as an operator is that we can invest substantially in a safer environment even when the returns are somewhat vague. A visible outcome of all this is NTRA safety and integrity accreditation is regarded as a fundamental operating requirement, and Woodbine sets best practice standards in virtually every area in the scope of the NTRA accreditation. Through the process of the accreditation, it's been pointed out that Woodbine enjoys some unique features that perhaps other operators might benefit from, and so I'm very happy to walk through just a selected few of these. The equine injury database is a very, very important tool for us. Any racetrack's team approach to safety culminates in the measurable form of catastrophics per 1,000 starts. When things go awry, this is a figure that we've taught our media and our public to track and report on. So to bring transparency to this process and partly to proactively manage that process when we get that kind of attention, we post our summary EID results publicly for all to see right on our website. But we use the EID for much more than just tracking the safe outcome of our races. Our official veterinarians track all of their observations from pre- and post-race observations and all vet scratches so that each may be followed up on as a course of standard diligence. And add to this, every movement of the Woodbine horse ambulance gets reported to our official vets and into the EID. If our horse ambulance moves any horse at any time for any reason, our official vets follow up for diagnosis and outcomes on that horse. And of course, if patterns emerge from all of this tracking, then the vets notify Woodbine and our HBPA, and we collaborate on what we can learn from those findings. There is a next step in all this that I think the industry may be much remiss for not engaging. How is it that we as an industry are still not formally tracking our non-racing injuries and fatalities? How much insight have we foregone by not holding tracks, horsemen, and facilities accountable for the incidents that occur off of the race day radar? I know it's a difficult nut to crack. We've been discussing it with our HBPA for a long time. We've got some ideas. But at least perhaps forums such as exactly this one are just the place to plant that seed and hope for some germination. Additional to catastrophics, racing injuries, and horse ambulance reports, we also, of course, track our vets list through the EID. I'm told that a unique factor of the Ontario vets list is that we have classifications within this list. So if you look on this outtake from the recent vets list, Elmo Shrugs is on there as a Class 1. That horse is going to come off the list automatically at the date provided. And then Essence of Audrey is a Class 2. It's going to have to be examined by the official veterinarian. And then a Class 3, like Executive Shopper, is going to have to be seen by the official vet, and it's going to post to work before that horse comes off the sheet. The beauty of the vets list as we use it is it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to all of our horses. Moving over to the Woodbine stall office. Woodbine has 2,170 racehorse stalls filled with racehorses from February well into December every year. And the turnover on these stalls is massive. We estimate at the peak of our season we're training as much as 2,300 or 2,400 horses a morning at Woodbine. That means there's a revolving door at the east stable gate of horses. We think the horse moving in and out of Woodbine is probably as substantial as any facility or racetrack in North American racing. And despite that challenge, at the end of the day, every day our stall office can list us every horse in every barn. It's a substantial task. It's achieved through a tight working relationship with our stable security team and the cooperation of our horsemen, although I'll admit to you occasionally it is in induced cooperation. So what does that do for us? Well, it's got obvious advantages to the race office. We know as well or better than many of our trainers exactly what horses are actually at our fingertips, and that can make a race go here and there. And there's certainly a heightened accountability for the fair use of the stalls, which is an extremely constrained asset at a place like Woodbine. But what it really does for the sake of this forum is it brings us trackability of these horses. If a hot spot breaks out in barn 3, some sort of infection, whatever it may be, we can often tell the vets who's been in that barn, who's been out of that barn, and to some degree where they came from and where they're going. Additional to this, several years ago, Woodbine had a terrible barn fire, and we were at a loss to identify many of the perished horses, and frankly, some of the loose horses too. I sure hope that we never have to call this asset into play for that scenario. We have a real luxury at Woodbine too, where we've set aside a bank of isolation stalls. It's in a barn well removed from the main grounds. And this luxury allows for the immediate and even voluntary removal of symptomatic horses from the racing shed row. This minimizes the duration and scope of exposure to healthy animals. And once in the isolation barn, we can control the cross-contamination of having only a single staff in the barn rather than numerous staff. Private vets, trainers, and officials are encouraged to take advantage of these stalls even at a moment's notice. The ability to isolate horses at a moment's notice. Last June 2013, we had a herpes virus scare at Woodbine. It played a critical role in that scare. I can confidently say that the availability of those isolation stalls absolutely kept additional barns out of quarantine conditions. The next two items I'm mentioning here really don't seem so extraordinary, and in fact, they've been adopted at a lot of racetracks. But believe me, there's a significant return on this relatively meager investment. Every valet and every assistant starter at Woodbine wears a helmet during the race day. Several years ago, when I was very fresh on the scene at Woodbine, we had a valet get his head smashed in the paddock. I thought he was dead. I actually had to place a call to the COO at the time in the moment and say, "Boss, we just got a man killed." That was a bad day for me. So his name was Cricket. Cricket didn't die, but he never worked again. And we identified at the time, had Cricket been wearing some form of a helmet, his outcome could have been far better. So later that year, we adopted the helmet and vest throughout our racing operations, and we've collected a lot of stories since then where our team has been awfully glad to have had those devices in place. I'll admit that we do have questions on the equestrian helmet that we use. Is this really the best device for the application? But lacking any scientific standards or professional recommendations, we're going to stick with this one until someone shows us the better thing. Now, this next thing's not so easy to acquire. In fact, I'll admit to you, this does not exist in the marketplace. But we believe very much in the Woodbine starting gate. And many well-traveled jockeys will tell you our starting gates are their favorite. This gate pictured here, custom built from scratch in 2009 at an all-in tag of $500,000. We custom built the gate because we could not find the specifications that we demanded in the market. We visited gates all the way across the continent. We stole a few good ideas and stuck with a lot of good ideas that we already had. Some of the unique features in this gate, the size of the stall is a little bit narrower. That helps the assistant starter manage a difficult horse, gives him the advantage. The pontoons are customized to best accommodate assistant starters without getting in the horse's way. The back doors move in tandem so that one man can slam that door shut. It doesn't take two or separate motions. The entire unit is actually very, very heavy. And what this brings for us, it brings solidity so that when a horse acts up in stall 1, the horse in stall 5 and 14 have no idea. That gate doesn't move. And the fronts open completely silently. They're damped with some reverse hydraulics. Without a bell, you wouldn't know the race has even started. I acknowledge that probably no racetrack can just jump up and custom build themselves a $500,000 starting gate. And I certainly would not suggest that to my board this morning either. My point, though, with this is, with the numerous danger possibilities at the starting gate, it serves us all to revisit starting gate design from time to time to make sure that this very dangerous part of our game is evolving along with everything else. Let's talk about the weather. An asset we daily benefit from at Woodbine is a state-of-the-art on-site weather station. This unit's installed at the head of the stretch of the main track at jockey height. The on-site station is more exact than relying on outside sources, and we can readily customize the data that we are receiving from this unit to best serve our operations and track maintenance needs. The left part of this screen is an interface where we can pull an infinite amount of historical weather information when it comes time to make decisions or analyze data. The right side of this slide is an actual screen capture from one of our real-time interfaces. This one in particular is the one that we stream on a screen in the jockey's room for all to use and see. I can affirm for you that this transparent reporting of actual weather conditions has been extraordinarily handy when we're managing the race car through a difficult day of high wind, low temperatures, high temperatures, whatever the scenario may be. It certainly brings a level of transparency and trust in the decision-making on whether to cancel or delay horse races. By later this summer, I hope to be providing a very similar stream to this to our customers so that they can bring it into their wagering decisions, because the variety of weather at Woodbine does indeed impact the outcome of our horse races. Lightning is an oft-forgotten hazard of our race days, or during training for that matter. The industry's long-time approach to lightning questions has been not better than having a volunteer stand in the paddock with his finger in the air. It's a system of guessing, and it's not a good one. We are currently testing a lightning detection unit. It's installed in the infield of the Woodbine racetrack. It's very similar to the device that's in use at thousands of race courses across North America. This is a screen capture that indicates 16 lightning strikes within 5 miles within the last 30 minutes. So this situation would, for example, trigger a delay of the next race, rain or shine, until there's been 30 minutes clear from the last strike. As an operator, I appreciate having this former guesswork boiled down to a black and white decision based on facts. Has Woodbine ever had anyone struck by lightning during training or racing? Not to my knowledge. Do I want to be the man in charge when it ever does happen? Absolutely not. Just a quick note on this. It is a device in test, but it's putting out some pretty fantastic results. We're very interested in its use, and I actually anticipate adoption for coming seasons. Onto the turf. This device pictured here is the going stick. It's a European invention. It's in use at every British racetrack. We're currently adopting it at Woodbine. It can scientifically measure the penetration and the shear strength of the turf course and combine those numbers into a metric that should correlate with the turf's rating, whether that's firm, good, soft yielding. So each day, our TrackMan walks the turf course and takes 3 readings at each 16th pole. And we can average those readings to actually peg a number to the track condition. We've been testing this device for some months now, and it's remarkably consistent with our more traditional means of rating the turf. What it's doing new for us, though, is providing an actual number to reference and historical numbers to reference when we're discussing the turf conditions with the horsemen. And once we're ready to add this information to our website and our daily race changes feed, I think our wagering customers will indeed like to make some hay with it too. We think this device is going to be particularly beneficial at a track like Woodbine because I believe our turf course probably has more variability in its conditions than many other turf courses. So to tie all of these things together, imagine the database we are building going forwards. We have highly detailed weather information that interacts with track conditions and, frankly, race results. We can combine with the track maintenance logs and the turf irrigation logs, add in the scientific approach to the turf, that is the going stick. Of course, past performance and workout data, all combined with the benefits of the equine injury database. If we can, down the road, add to that infinite data by tracking non-racing injuries, we are going to be armed to the teeth to decipher better what causes injuries to our horses. To me, the industry seems poised for this challenge, and we are looking forward to an ever brighter future because of exactly that expanding horizon. So that's all for me, and I'm happy for any questions or anything else I might be able to add.
Any questions from the audience? Yes, Jeff?
That's a very valid question because a guy like me loves the black and white decision rather than the long discussion. We have some standards, but what we do is trigger discussion points more than a race cancellation decision. Although by the time you're discussing it, sometimes you're on a trajectory already. But we've been known to at extremely high temperatures. Now, forgive me, I'm about to go into Canadian mode at 44 Celsius heat index. That's 100-something Fahrenheit, I don't know. Probably right at 100, I suppose. We're going to be very seriously considering the welfare of the horse at minus 20 Celsius. Anybody want to help me out on that conversion real quick? We're definitely talking about this is ridiculously cold and none of us want to be here. And then wind. We have incredible wind at Woodbine. And there's something about that place that causes sort of a cyclone effect, and we get beat by the wind over and over again. And when we get to approaching 50 kilometers an hour, we're having a heck of a lot of conversation about how to manage this. So that's a very good question.
Yes, in the back. Jamie.
That's probably a good conversation for a couple of us. Let's go a step further. Why don't we combine the microchip with Trackus, and we can follow the workouts, and the clocking department would think that's fantastic. There's all kinds of technology I think we can start combining and have some remarkable outcomes from. As far as knowing every horse that trains, well, every horse in the East Gate and every horse out the East Stable Gate, we know that horse, so we do know who trains. And then through the beauties of Encompass and some of our own record keepings, we know every horse that's active and what kind of active it's been too. Tremendous benefits for the race office that way. To get into the zone of the other part of your question, probably I'm better off to let one of my peers get into, I think.
Yeah, we would love to know which horses swim. We would love to know which horses swim that stop going to the racetrack, because we have a swimming pool. So.
Dr. Kennedy?
I couldn't hear the last half of that, but let me hit the first part, and then I'll ask you for the last half if I don't hit it. So we've got 2,170 racehorse stalls at Woodbine. Through the bulk of the year, every one of those stalls is filled, but on a given morning this time of year, we'll train more horses than we have stalls, anywhere from 100 to 200 more horses. Now, granted, that's peak of season numbers. So I didn't get the second half, though. So I'm not sure I got the question. I think the question has to do is, yeah, there's a lot of horses that are in to train, and they're gone again, and we don't know anything about those horses in between. You just painted a picture of the standardbred industry in Ontario. There is no on-track stabling for the standardbreds in Ontario. Every horse is a ship-in every night for every race, and so there's an entire industry based on that. And it certainly brings its own share of frustrations for that industry, and therefore on a lesser, well, not a lesser scale, but a very important scale for the thoroughbred industry.
What method do you use to track how the horses are training? Well, like which horses go to the track and which horses just walk around the shed row?
Well, I may have exaggerated that point a little bit. Through the magic of Encompass and all the databases we have, it's mostly about we can run report. We have a horses on grounds report that you can select your date when that was as of, or what moment in time that was as of. But along with that report comes the horse's last race, the horse's last work, and then we can combine that with certain other things. But don't let me overstate that point about how much, whether we know that horse walked or jogged this morning.
Anybody else out there with questions? Okay, well, seeing none, thank you, Steve, very much. And we are going to take a 15-minute break right now, so we'll come back at 10:15. Promptly, thank you.